best friend was a mermaid. The summer before I started school, my mom was hospitalized for an extraordinarily high-risk pregnancy. My dad was pulling double shifts to keep us afloat, which meant no one had time to take care of me, so they shipped me to my aunt's house 1,000 miles away. I was excited at first. I was obsessed with the idea of adventure, a real adventure with magical creatures and quests. Maybe this trip would be the catalyst to just such an adventure. By the time we reached my aunt's enormous and breathtakingly beautiful mountain property, I fully believed I was about to embark on my very own fairy tale. The fairy tale dissipated when my father drove away the next morning. I watched his car disappear, trying not to cry and failing miserably. When you are 6 years old, a day feels like a week. A day with strangers feels twice as long, especially when the strangers aren't kind. Aunt Charlotte didn't particularly care for my mother, and by extension, didn't particularly care for me. Nor did her children. Charles and Alan loved nothing more than scaring me to death with stories of serial killers and child-drowning ghosts. They also made it extraordinarily clear that I ranked far below them in the family hierarchy. So I spent my days roaming the property. Rocky peaks stood sentry in every direction, rising from the landscape like curious giants. Stands of aspens rattled in the wind, snowy bark shining, and the wildflowers, fragrant, multicolored carpets of blossoms, spreading across meadows and trailing under the trees where they glowed like dim, warm lights. The outdoors soothed my isolation as effectively as a salve. In late June, the zenith of summer, just before the walloping heat of July burns everything to a dry tangle, I found the neighbor's house, small and run-down, with a garbage-strewn lawn. Through an open window I saw a woman. She didn't look right. Half-lidded eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, and her mouth hung open. I turned away and continued my hike. There's something sharp in mountain air, a clean wildness that simultaneously heightens your senses and intoxicates you. I drifted through the forest in a delighted haze until a voice broke my reverie. A child's voice, happily singing. I perked up. Fairies and nymphs sang in forests. Maybe I'd found my very own magical creature. Maybe this was the start of my adventure. I ran through the trees. Aspens rattled in my wake, breaking apart suddenly to reveal a murky pond. And in the pond, a little girl with long black hair. I froze. So did she. Sun shafted through the trees, drenching her in golden light. "Hi," I said nervously. "My name's Rachel." I held up my fingers. "I'm 6. The girl's eyes shone, large and dark yet somehow golden, like sunlight glancing off tar. "I'm Lorelei, and I'm a mermaid." I stepped closer, feet crunching on twigs and leaves. "I've never met a mermaid. I'm the last one," my mother told me. She swanned across the pond, stopping just short of the edge. "Is your mom a mermaid?" "No, just human. She had 5 kids, all mermaids. Every last one died except me." Shocked tears burned my eyes. All of them," she intoned. "It's not her fault. She didn't know her kids were mermaids, but she finally figured it out in time to save me." "Do you live in the water?" "Yes, for 10 hours a day. I come in at night since I'm scared of the dark. That's because I'm not all the way mermaid yet." She ducked underwater and erupted with a glittering splash. "When I'm all the way mermaid, nothing will scare me." "What do you mean, not all the way mermaid?" I crept closer. The earth was dangerously soft under my feet, like it might crumble into the water. Lorelei was clearly enjoying herself. "Mermaids look like humans, unless they spend lots of time in the water. Water washes away the human part, so the mermaid part can come out. I have to be in water at least 10 hours. She held up her own small wrinkly fingers. "Every day, or I'll get sick and die." "When will you become full mermaid?" "Soon." She swam to the other end, once more stopping several inches short of the shore. Mom says changing hurts, and I hurt everywhere. I'm sorry. Lorelei smiled radiantly. Don't be. When I'm a mermaid, I'll find a special tunnel at the bottom of the pond. It leads to the ocean, but only mermaids can see it. I can't wait. Have you seen the ocean? Yes, I said. My dad takes me to Cabrillo Beach. Where's that? California. Her eyes went wide, and she clapped her hands. I noticed they were covered in swollen red bumps, like bug bites. You're from California. We spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the California coast. I'll come see you when I'm a mermaid, Lorelei promised. You can't be scared, though. Full mermaids aren't pretty. But we're really nice if you give us a chance. I'll give you lots of chances. You're the nicest person I've ever met. Nicest mermaid, she corrected, and laughed. I visited Lorelei every morning, and left just before sunset. That's when her mom came to fetch her. I had to leave before then because she'd be furious that I'd discovered Lorelei's secret. Every day I brought chips, sandwiches, and drawings of mermaids. We sang nursery rhymes and lullabies, the Blues Clues theme, and original compositions. Mostly we talked. We discussed everything. California, the ocean, fairy tales, the forest, her dead siblings, and my forthcoming brother. You need to check if he's a mermaid, she said seriously. If he is, you have to put him in the water so he doesn't die. How can you tell? My mom says you have to listen to your lizard brain, Lorelei answered. It knows. That night I dreamed of drowned babies and long, sinuous lizards crawling out of my eyes to whisper strange secrets in my ear. Lorelei was a welcome break from everything else, from my cousins, who constantly tormented me and scared me to death with ghost stories, from my aunt, who ignored me, and from my own fears, which ate me alive unless I was with Lorelei. As June bled into July, and July hobbled into a breathless and suffocating August, I realized Lorelei was the best friend I ever had. I told her so one afternoon as I lay belly down on the damp shore. She gave me a tired smile. I figured she must have been close to becoming full mermaid, because she looked awful, bone thin, with dark hollows under her eyes and broken teeth. You're the only friend I ever had. How? You're so nice. She swam over, stopping several inches short of the edge as always. She was so close, I could smell her breath, which was ghastly. People are scared of mermaids. That's why Mom hides me. But being friends with a mermaid is super lucky. She took my hand. Her skin was cold and somehow thin, like a fish belly, white and nearly translucent, except for the angry red welts and mosquito bites. I'll make you the luckiest person in the world, I promise. The prospect of mermaid luck made me so giddy I couldn't contain myself. When I got home that night, I regaled everyone with tales of my mermaid friend, Lorelei. Charlotte exchanged a worried glance with her husband. Then Charles snorted with laughter. A mermaid? Stupid. Charles, what? He guffawed again. She's talking about mermaids. Her imaginary friend is so stupid, it lives in stagnant water, Alan added. No, I stood up angrily. Her name is Lorelei, and she's real. I'll show you right now. But nobody wanted to tromp across several woodland acres in the growing dark, because nobody believed in mermaids. Nobody except me. Over the following days, Lorelei's condition deteriorated severely. Mosquito bites peppered her water-wrinkled skin. Strange, puffy welts snaked over her body. Her long black hair became a haven for water bugs and detritus. I feel things in my skin. She extended her rashy, welt-covered arm. I think I have bugs inside me, she grimaced. When I'm a mermaid, I'll be poisonous to bugs. They'll never bite me again. Looking at her, the skeletal form, the stark, almost inhuman sharpness of her face, made me want to cry. I wish I could help you. You do, she assured me. You'll be here when I turn into a mermaid, and you'll show me how to get to California. She took my hands. Hers were terribly weak and cold. You should go. It's almost sunset. Thick golden light drowned the world in an ethereal haze. But sure enough, shadows were growing, devouring that light before me eyes. Okay. See you tomorrow, Lorelei. See you tomorrow, Rachel. That gilded sunlight lay over her like a blanket. It erased the sickness and ugliness, leaving a small, dark-haired angel, a real mermaid. As I left, she broke into a song. The melody echoed through the forest for so long, it could have been magic. That night, Charles scared me with his favorite ghost story. Alan insisted he'd seen the ghost in question, a rail-thin woman draped in white, drifting through the trees outside my window. They brought me to tears, then told me they were going ghost hunting, and I had to come along. They forced me into the forest. Heavy shadows blanketed the trees, black and blue and deep, ominous purple, thick as curtains. Finally, we stopped in a clearing. Aspens ringed the little meadow, glimmering weirdly like skinny ghosts full of unblinking black eyes. They poured a ring of salt in an uneven circle and chanted. Their voices filled the night, underscored by the light wind and the eerie rattle of the leaves. Weeping Lady of the Woods, Charles finally bellowed, we summon you now. Silence, and then a sound, high, miserable, and broken, sobbing. My cousins froze. The weeping continued, a haunting, atonal melody bleeding through the night. Charles ran, and Alan followed. I watched them go, frozen to the spot, until the sobbing broke my paralysis. I tore after them, expecting long, white hands to reach out of the darkness and pull me away. We ran for what felt like hours. When the house finally came into sight, I had a second of relief before I tripped and skidded down the slope. A tree trunk hurtled toward me like a rocket. Then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital, minor skull fracture and a concussion, but otherwise okay. I went home 3 days later. 3 days after that, I crept out of the house to see Lorelei. On my way to the pond, I entered an aspen-ringed clearing. My feet crunched weirdly. I looked down and saw a dirty, uneven ring of salt. This was where my cousins held their stupid seance. Just a few minutes later, I saw the pond glimmering through the trees. Relief and excitement coursed through me. Lorelei, nothing. The water shone, a field of gold interrupted by mosquitoes and water bugs. Lorelei, I circled the pond, dread building with every step. I called, and eventually screamed, but there was no point. Lorelei was gone. She'd turned into a mermaid, and I'd missed it. She'd never get to California now. I sat down and wept for hours. Towards sunset, a shrill wail shocked me out of my daze. Fear coiled in my guts as it sounded again. Not a wail, a siren. I followed the sound to that broken-down little house. Flashing lights drenched the trees in red and blue. The window, still wide open, blazed with light. Paramedics loaded an inert body onto a stretcher and carried it outside of the ambulance. A police radio crackled, and a cop looked up. Had it not been for the trees, she would have seen me. Maybe they were looking for me. I'd run away, even though I had a skull fracture and was supposed to stay in bed. Maybe they'd arrest me. I tiptoed into the forest and went home. By the time I reached my aunt's house, dark had long since fallen. I felt sick and dizzy, and my head throbbed with every step. Everyone was waiting for me. Cousins, aunt and uncle, and to my horror, a policeman. My aunt stormed over. I thought she was going to hit me. Instead, she gathered me into a hug and held me tight. This is what they told me. The neighbor was a mentally ill drug addict who overdosed several days before. A welfare check from her landlord led to the discovery of her body. She had 5 children. 3 were in foster care, One died of SIDS, the last. A girl named Lorelei was officially missing. A filthy, bedbug-infested bedroom indicated that a child lived in that house. It was covered in mermaid memorabilia, including several pictures I'd drawn for her, but they couldn't find her. I told them about the pond. Their horrified expressions were at odds with the hysterical relief I felt. It's because she's a mermaid. She turned into a mermaid and swam to California. They searched the pond that night. At the bottom was an algae-slick block of granite. Chained to the block was the corpse of an emaciated little girl with long black hair. It's been 20 years. I can't shake the memory of the seance, of the shrill crying echoing in the darkness. I was stupid enough to believe it was a ghost, but it was just a little girl who was scared of the dark. True encounter with a mermaid. Everything you think about mermaids are wrong. They are not busty women with long flowing hair and thin waists. Well, they kind of are, but they are not nice. Trust me. My family owns a small lake house near a body of water, green with algae in South Florida. I can't say much about the location though. All I can give is it's in Florida. I live upstate in New York and decided to visit the lake house during midsummer, alone. The first few days were fun and sunshine, the notorious weather Florida is known for. Then the real Florida weather kicked in. The storm was horrible, thunder and all the works, but in the distance I heard it, a soft melody, high-pitched just right. It was enchanting. The voice seemed to multiply and grew louder as the storm progressed. It almost sounded like a continuous battle cry. I couldn't help but feel pulled to the voices, half by curiosity, and the other by the seeming hypnosis the song caused. I opened the wood door to the outside. Reluctantly, may I add, as I opened the door. It felt like my body was not my own. I felt like a puppet on a string, and the voices my puppeteer. The rain pounded hard against the porch roof, bound by logs of wood and twine. My bare feet met the wet, cold sand, and the rain pounds against my body, and I followed the voice. It leads to a moon pool that resided only a few feet from the lake, the water rising up from the water and overflowing, and I saw where the voices came from. Beautiful woman sat in the moon pool. 3 women with long white hair and dark skin, bare-chested, with scales of gray, green, and red on their shoulders and cheeks, and piercing red eyes. They beckoned me to them, singing their soft, haunting song, and I stepped into the moon pool and sat in front of them, my clothes becoming wet. They swarmed me, touching my chest, and hair smiling softly. Then I noticed it. Below their waist laid fish-like tails covered in scales again, gray, red, and green. They had long nails as well. When a certain mermaid brushed against my chest, my shirt ripped open from the sharpness. Then something bad happened. They smiled at me with sharp blood-stained teeth, similar to a piranha's teeth. Some of them even overlapped, greeting extra layers of razor-sharp teeth. I snapped out of my trance and screamed loudly. One of them pounced, scratching my face deeply with her claw-like nails. The other one sunk her sharp fangs in my shoulder, and the other grabbed my arm tightly. I hit them with all the force in my arms. They growled and bared their teeth as I jumped out of the moon pool, almost slipping and falling against the wet sand. I rushed to the house and slammed my door, locking it tightly. I leaned against the door and cried, gripping my bleeding shoulder. I woke up the next morning, thinking it was all a dream, until I looked at the gashes and scar. Mermaids are not what you think. They are dangerous, and if you see one, run as humanly fast as possible away from the ocean and lakes, and don't follow songs during a storm. I met a mermaid when I was 9 years old. Well met is the wrong word to use. I saw a mermaid when I was 9. We never spoke, but she was my friend. Sometimes she would wave to me when I was out on the water. Other times, she would just stick her head out of the water and smile. I didn't have many friends at 9, your usual situation. A quiet girl with a mousy appearance who would rather read a book than have makeover sleepovers. However, my quality of life didn't suffer because of this, if anything, in my mind at the time. My life was far better than those of my peers. I got to live the lives of the characters I loved most whenever I opened a book. So why would I care about a stupid sleepover when I could step into a mysterious castle in England with a mere flip of a page? Admittedly, I did get a little too caught up from time to time with my ranting and raving about magical worlds and creatures that slipped from the pages to my reality. So it was no surprise to me when my mother rolled her eyes after I told her that I had seen a mermaid. She rolled her eyes and shook her head, sending a quick shot of cold through me, a feeling that came with knowing she was rejecting my idea, leaving me embarrassed and with a need to prove what I was saying was true. Come on, Mom, please. I saw it. I know I did. That's what you said about the dragon you saw fly over our house on Tuesday. She was right. I had made that up. I thought I had seen a dragon, but quickly realized it was a cloud. But that didn't stop me from immediately telling my mom all about it. Today was different, though. Today we were at Grandma's house by the beach. There was something about that place that enhanced my imagination, maybe because we were right on the water, and the air always smelled of things I had never smelt before. Earlier that day, I had gone out on our boat with my grandma for a few hours. We were about 30 minutes west of the dock when I saw her. She was exactly how I pictured mermaids: blonde, smooth skin, smiling, bright blue eyes. She bobbed up and down in the water, grinning at me, her arm raising up in a quick wave. I remember my heart stopping and having to make an effort to hold in yelps of glee so I didn't scare my grandmother. By the time I could tell my mom, I was ready to burst, so it was extra disappointing when she shot me down like she did. I didn't bother pushing it with my mom anymore that night, so I decided to turn around and go to bed, knowing I would just have to show her the mermaid in the morning. Sure enough, the next day she was there. I looked over the front of the boat and squealed when I saw her peering out at us from behind the same rocks she had been near the day before. I darted to the back and grabbed my mom, yelling nonsense about how she was wrong and I was going to be right for once. In the 5 seconds it took for me to get her to the front of the boat, the mermaid had disappeared. My face fell. I looked up at my mother, the beginnings of disbelief on my tongue, but before I could say anything, she just smiled and shook her head and walked back to the far end of the boat. I didn't understand. She had been there a second ago, so where was she now? I was determined to see her again. I sought her out for 4 more days, until finally I was ready to give up. It was my last day at the beach, and I was ready to decide that I had made her up in my head. When my grandma offered up one last boat ride before I went home, I agreed, not thinking I would see the mermaid, but just to be on the water one last time. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw her, just as I had seen her the other 2 times, floating idly by the rocks. She looked a little different this time. Her hair looked whiter than before, and her eyes had become completely blue from end to end. Her smile seemed weighed down. The skin around it looked gray, but it could have just been a trick of the light on the water. She raised her arm a bit in a half-hearted wave. I did the same, smiling, knowing I had been right all along. Offers in Yandao. Over time, I forgot about my mermaid friend, until last night. I had spent all day moving into my new apartment, and I crashed pretty early and woke up pretty late. When I woke up, I remembered a dream I had had about a blonde mermaid. She was screaming about how she was stuck under a rock, and she sobbed and sobbed into the water that she was scared and tired, waving one arm out of the water, hoping anyone would see her. She looked familiar, so it didn't take long for me to remember the mermaid I had seen when I was young. I'm writing this now because I got lunch with my grandma today. She told me that earlier that week they had found bones in the lagoon outside her house, partially under the big rocks out west. I don't think I ever met a mermaid. My brother discovered something at the bottom of the ocean, and now he's missing. My brother Edwin was in a very secretive, niche line of work. Anytime someone asked him what he did, he would tell them he was like a marine biologist of sorts. I always knew he wasn't a marine biologist, although I was never sure of what he actually did. He told me once that he was legally not allowed to tell anyone his exact job position or the type of work he did, nor was he allowed to tell anyone the name of the organization that he worked for. He talked about his job a lot, for someone who was not supposed to do that, but all his stories were vague enough that we would never really know what he was talking about. He would tell us about a coworker of his who saw sharks in the ocean a few feet away while they worked, or about how he accidentally fell off the boat one day and had to get a new cell phone. But he never specifically talked about the work he was doing, or the coworker's name, or any other type of identifying information. We were all used to this secrecy after years of him working in this same field. But that didn't stop the confusion and questions that we all had after he disappeared. They wouldn't tell us the exact circumstances that surrounded his disappearance, or where he went missing, what he was doing, who reported it, or if there were any witnesses. Nothing. The only response we got was that law enforcement was doing their best to solve this case, but that they couldn't guarantee that they would find Edwin dead or alive. We did get a letter in the mail about a month after we went missing from someone called John Smith, who claimed to be Edwin's boss. In the letter, John claimed that Edwin had gone missing while he was out on a boat doing research. Along with the letter, there was a check for $20,000, but 20 grand couldn't bring Edwin back. He was presumed dead after a while, and we had a funeral for an empty casket. Everyone was angry and confused, but there was really nothing that we could do at this point. Exactly 1 month after Edwin's funeral, I received a package in the mail. The return address was Edwin's, and the box was big and heavy, with a fragile warning on the top and sides. It was sitting on my porch when I went outside for my morning walk, and after struggling a bit, I managed to drag it into my living room and open it. The box was filled with books and journals, as well as other random items, and there was an envelope sitting at the top, taped to one of the journals, addressed to me. "Tina, read this first." I carefully peeled the tape off the journal and opened the envelope, which hadn't been sealed shut. Inside, I found a note that had been handwritten on notebook paper. I recognized Edwin's all-caps writing when I unfolded it and sat down on the floor near the box to read it. "Tina, if you're reading this, then something probably happened to me. I think they might try to tell you that I'm dead, but I'm not. They know I'm not, but they aren't allowed to tell you otherwise. Maybe they'll give you hope and tell you I'm missing. I technically will be missing, and they might try to look for me. In fact, you might try to look for me, or maybe my parents will, but you won't find me. It won't matter how long you search, or how well you search, or if you hire the best private investigator in the world. You will never find me. Not because I don't want to be found, because believe me, I will want to go back home, but because nobody but me knows the exact location of where I will be. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Edwin, if you know where you are going to be, why wouldn't you just tell me? What's the point of sending me this stuff and not telling me where you'll be? You have to believe me when I say that it's for your own safety. You can't unlearn things, Tina. Once you know something, you know it forever. It'll be in your head for the rest of your life, and you won't be able to escape it. Sometimes, ignorance really is bliss, and in this case, the more clueless you are about my exact whereabouts, the better. I had my lawyer set this up in the event of my disappearance. By the time you get this, I will have been missing for over a year. This is how I planned it. Any sooner, and someone would have suspected something. I don't want people coming after you, but I want you to know what I found. I need someone to know what I found. This might sound stupid, and I'm being a hypocrite, having just told you all that bullshit about ignorance being bliss. But I need to warn people. Somebody has to be ready for what's coming. I picked you because we've always been close, and you've never doubted me. You've always been the type of person to go along with my insane plans without even questioning them. Remember when we were 10, and I thought it would be fun to buy a kid's swimming pool and use it to ride down the river behind our grandparents' cabin? It was a stupid idea, obviously, but you did it anyway. And when we couldn't get back to shore for a few minutes, you helped me figure out how to get back, instead of yelling at me and calling me stupid, even though it was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I hope you still feel that way about my ideas. I hope you're still willing to help me, even when it's dangerous and stupid. I know this is a selfish thing to ask, but I could really use your help, Tina, and I hope you at least think about it. Edwin. I set the letter off to the side, immediately deciding to help Edwin with whatever he had gotten himself into. I grabbed the first journal I saw and opened it to the first page. All the journals looked pretty much the same, brown, leather-bound, and old. On the first page, there was a year written in the top corner of the page. The first journal was from over 4 years ago. On the next page, there were a few sketches of a boat, as well as something that looked like an island, although there were no identifying details mentioned anywhere on the page. I flipped the page and found a short entry behind the sketches. Most of it was notes and comments about Plato's dialogues and the lost city of Atlantis. It seemed like Edwin was doing research on Plato, or at least on the city of Atlantis. The rest of the journal contained more sketches and random quotes and notes about Atlantis. A few pages in, he began to research lost civilizations, and I found a few notes on the lost colony of Roanoke and the Anasazi. On one page there was a list titled Lost Cities, which contained Atlantis and Roanoke, along with around 50 others in different languages that I had never heard of before. I was confused as to why he was looking into lost civilizations if his job mainly involved the ocean. At least, that's what I assumed from the things he had told us. The first couple of journals that I flipped through were mainly research. Most of the entries followed the same format: research and random notes and sketches about one specific lost civilization, followed by some sketches about the area in which the civilization was located. And in most cases, there were even theories about what had happened to them. He used almost one full notebook for each civilization that he was researching, and I spent almost the entire day looking through journal after journal. I decided to take a break in the evening to eat and shower before I went back to look through more. There had to be at least 60 journals in the box, amongst other things that I hadn't even gotten to yet. So far, I had found no explanation for what it was that Edwin was doing, and at one point, I started to think that maybe this wasn't even work-related. Maybe Edwin had some weird obsession with lost civilizations and had taken it upon himself to look into them. Inside of the journals, however, I found a folded-up piece of paper with an official-looking seal on it. The seal was gold, and in the shape of waves inside a circle, with a small X at the top. It was a letter addressed to Edwin, which mentioned something called Project 22.4. The documents contained no identifying information as to what Project 22.4 was, only that it was assigned to Edwin over 3 years ago, and that he was supposed to research the details of the case and track down leads in order to discover the truth behind one of our organization's greatest mysteries, as the letter read. It was signed by someone, but the name had been redacted with blank ink. I continued to look through the journal, where I was able to piece together a few different entries to learn that Edwin was planning a few different trips to an undisclosed location X in order to gather more information for the project. The entries were vague, and had I not found the letter, I might not have realized that Edwin had planned out visits to this location and had actually gone back a number of times. I was also able to gather that he had taken someone with him, although the person was unnamed and only referenced twice. Once in a sketch of the boat Edwin was going to be taking on this trip, and the second time when he made a note about his phone being messed up due to water damage on the trip. I thought back to the stories he told us about his mystery coworker and figured that whoever went on this trip with him was the same person he told us stories about. Although I didn't think Edwin would have listed any personal information about this coworker, I thought about attempting to track them down. Since they had taken so many trips with Edwin and worked with him on this secret project, they might know where he went or what he was doing on the day of his disappearance. However, in the entry about Edwin's fourth trip out to the mystery location, he noted that on the way there, the boat became stuck at some point, making a small note about being thankful he had help and was able to get the boat moving again. Further down the page, when Edwin wrote about leaving the location with no concrete information for the project, he once again mentions the boat getting stuck. Only this time, he states boat was much harder to move by myself. Took almost half an hour to get it back to normal. Got back later than anticipated. From that line, I was able to conclude that whoever was taking these trips with Edwin had possibly died or gone missing on that day, making them a dead end. I fell asleep on the living room floor that night and woke up to the sunlight gleaming through my living room windows. I got up, sore from being on the hard floor all night, and started my coffee machine, taking the journal with me to read while I made breakfast and drank my coffee. Edwin went back to the mystery location over 10 times, sometimes mentioning a new piece of evidence that he found, but never stating what it was or what he was attempting to prove. The last 10 or so pages of the journal were empty, so I tossed it on one of my couches, along with all the other ones I had already read. I still had a couple more journals to go through, and I wasn't even at the ones written within the last 2 years yet. I dug through the box a bit before I found an old iPhone box. I picked it up, expecting it to be an old phone, but the rattling inside the box told me otherwise. I took the top off to find that it contained about 10 different flash drives inside. I ran to my bedroom to grab my laptop and sat back down on the floor, grabbing a random flash drive from the box. None of them were labeled, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to find. When I opened the first one, there was only one folder on the drive titled 12.4. I clicked on the folder and it opened. It contained one photo only, and it was a photo of Edwin's ID card from work. The name of the company had been blurred out, and the only information available was Edwin's photo, date of birth, and employee ID number. I grabbed another drive and set the first one aside. The next one contained 3 folders, the first 2 titled Folder 1 and Folder 2, and the third titled 040412. I opened Folder 1 first, which contained about 10 photos. I scrolled through each picture, but there wasn't really anything interesting or useful about them. The first 5 pictures were of the boat Edwin would take on his trips, and the rest were photos of the sky, the water, and the shore as they got further and further into the ocean. Folder 2 contained pretty much the same, only from a different day, as these photos appeared to have been taken on a cloudy day, whereas the others were taken on a sunnier day. I opened the last folder to find more pictures, but these seemed to be scans of different sketches. There were a few sketches of the boat and some sketches of coral and fish in the sea. The last sketch, however, was of a mermaid swimming underwater. The sketch was made from an aerial view, showing the back of the mermaid as it swam. I moved on to the next couple of flash drives, but most of them contained more photos or scans from various textbooks or sources that discussed more lost civilizations throughout time. I was on the last flash drive, which also contained photos, and I scrolled through more ocean sketches of fish, sharks, trash, and eventually mermaids. This drive had a lot more sketches of mermaids, male and female, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. In some sketches, they appeared to be doing underwater tricks of sorts, and in others, they were drawn tiny, as if being seen from a great distance away. The last couple of sketches were less magical and more on the creepy side. There were a couple of detailed sketches of mermaids looking from the ocean floor, surrounded by dark water, with only their glowing yellow eyes piercing through the dark. They were very well done and painted. It was honestly impressive. In another sketch, there was a mermaid who was half shielded by the dark, but partially illuminated by a light source. Her face was grotesque, wrinkled and peeling, as if she was decaying from being underwater for so long. There was a chunk of skin hanging off her cheekbone, and the skin around her left nostril was missing entirely. She had no hair on her face, no eyelashes or eyebrows, and her eyes were sunken into her face and bright yellow, with large pupils that almost covered the entire yellow part. Her hair was long and flowy in the water, but at the same time, it looked thin and brittle. I scrolled to the next sketch, and my heart sank to my stomach when I saw another sketch of a mermaid. This one was fully illuminated, which made her scarier to look at. She was topless, and all her exposed skin was wrinkly and peeling off of her body in large chunks. Her lips were split in random places, and her mouth was slightly open. She had no teeth, and her hair was falling out in clumps, leaving bald patches on her head. One of her hands was reaching towards me, as if she was going to grab me and drag me down with her. She had no fingernails, and the skin on her fingers and hands was also peeling. Her mermaid tail was a sickening brown shade, like the color of rotting fruit, and looked like it would have a coarse, leathery texture to it. I moved on to the last sketch, which was of an underwater city, although it looked like something you would see in a dystopian film. It looked like the aftermath of a nuclear attack, with run-down buildings that had holes in them, and one gust of wind away from crumbling. I could see a couple of mermaids in the distance, swimming through the city. I put all the drives back into the box, and set the box on my couch, along with the journals when I was done. I went back to the box and found an old cassette player that contained one cassette in it. It had already been rewound, and so I pressed play and waited. He's gone. Fuck, okay. I recognized Edwin's voice immediately, his thick accent coming through on every word. It's April 4th. I came out here with my partner. We're working on Project 22.4. We made it to the location, but something happened. Fuck, how do I explain this? I could hear water sloshing in the back. Okay, he's gone. That's it. I can't say more. Sorry, but I was told not to attempt a rescue if this happened, as was he. It's what he agreed to. The tape stopped there. I picked up the cassette player again, and noticed that there was an envelope taped to the back of that as well, only it was torn and empty. I dug through the rest of the box and found another cassette tape at the bottom. I put it into the player and pressed play. This is my final report for Project 22.4. This is Edwin Rodriguez. We found what you were looking for. It's right there where you told me it would be. But that's not necessarily good news. What you failed to realize is that they would want revenge. They know what you did, and they're planning something big. I know I'm going to be sent back again. I know you want more proof, but just the stuff I've turned in, but actual physical evidence. But there's no way I will get away with that. I've turned in all my documents and research for Project 22.4, and I'm done. I won't be coming back again. Don't go looking for them. Instead, run. Go somewhere far away, far from the ocean. It won't save you, but it will buy you time. They're coming. They've been planning this for decades. None of us will survive, and I don't think we deserve to. Warn as many as you can, but know that if you do, they will come after you. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. Tell my parents that I love them. I dug through the rest of the box as I tried to figure out what Edwin had found and why he was so scared. I found a folded piece of paper under one of the journals, still in the box, and carefully pulled it out. It was folded haphazardly, and I figured it must have been whatever had fallen out of the envelope behind the cassette player. As I got a closer look at it, I realized it wasn't just a piece of paper, but a photo. I carefully unfolded it, trying not to tear it. When I did, I froze in shock. I touched the photo to make sure that it was an actual photo from an actual camera, but the date printed at the bottom of the photo proved that it was. I was looking at the same photo of the mermaid that I had seen before, on one of the flash drives. The one I had assumed was simply a sketch, but it wasn't a sketch. None of them had been. They were all real. And this is what Edwin was warning me about.